Hey there.
Hi.
It's Pastor Stan here. This is my wife, Marquita,
Mhm.
and we're on again with you just for this quick moment. We were talking about this week friendship
Mhm.
and other kinds of covenant relationships. Just something that spurred off of the message that I preached on this past Sunday. I hope that you can listen to this past Sunday's message. I really believe it'll bless your life. We've been in a series, a covenant keeper series. There's about 4 or 5 parts to it. And in the series, we, of course, looked at the fact that we can have a covenant relationship with God. And it is absolutely a covenant, separate, not breakable, but by death.
Mhm.
And then we have a covenant relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yes.
When we accept Jesus, not only do we enter into covenant with God, but we also enter into covenant with the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And then we looked at the second covenant kind of relationship, and that's a marriage covenant. And it is a blood covenant. It's
Yes.
a very powerful, it's not just a legal agreement. But then on this past Sunday, we looked at other covenants. So this entire series is about covenant relationships,
Yes.
and there are some covenant relationships out there.
There are, and I'm so glad you brought that up. It's a very great, powerful series about relationships, and that brings to mind a question that I wanted to take the time to ask you.
Okay, so our goal for today is we're going to talk about Married to Friends Part 2.
Mhm.
So yesterday we talked about, because one of the other kind of covenant relationships is, a friendship, a forever friend. I think I called it that.
Yes. Yes.
And of course, you can have a godparent type covenant relationship, power of attorney. The other one I think is like when you're a legal guardian,
Mhm.
and even when you go into debt. I was ministering last night and that came up.
Yes.
That when you sign for a mortgage, I mean, you don't have to put droplets of blood down, but it's a covenant, it's a contract.
Yep.
Obviously, you can get out of that, which diminishes as a bit at the level of a covenant. But we were talking about the covenant relationship in a marriage.
Yes.
That you can have forever friends, and that your spouse, it should be that your spouse is a forever friend.
That's correct.
But you can have friendships outside of your marriage that are covenant relationships, and they can be impactful on your marriage. And so we want to talk about two sides of that. Yesterday, in this little quick moment that we had with you, we talked about, being married to your friend, or they say you should marry your best friend, but, my wife became my best friend because I really didn't know her when we first got together. I knew it was God. I could tell you that. I knew absolutely that it was God. But then as we've grown together, she is absolutely my best friend. So that's great. And then, we challenge those that are unmarried to be able to pursue that. But today we really want to focus on, that part about what happens when your spouse has a friend that's a forever friend, and how impactful that could be on the marriage relationship.
Yes. So, back to my question that I had for you. So, what do you do when a husband has a friend that essentially competes with the relationship he has with his wife?
Is that person saved or unsaved? I
Um,
guess it doesn't matter if it competes, but
Correct. That would be correct, but we'll go with their unsaved friend.
okay. And obviously, if a person has a saved friend, whether it be a husband has a friend or a wife has a friend, if they're born again and the Holy Spirit lives in them, that friend, if they are a friend, should respect that marriage relationship. The Spirit of God will deal with them about that. But I know for me, I mean, as pastoring over the years, there have been people that have expressed concern because their spouse is in a relationship or friendship. I mean, they were friends with this person before that they even married their spouse, and now that forever friendship is impacting negatively, and that person's not even saved.
Okay.
There's two things that I would respond. I can imagine there are people in the church that say, well, if you got a friend and your spouse, especially if they're not saved, then you need to get rid of them. If you go back and listen to this Sunday's message, I believe there's some information there because friends don't let friends go to hell. And Jesus was called the friend of sinners. I actually looked that up. You know, Jesus was a friend of sinners.
Okay.
So if you have, if I as a husband have an unsaved friend that they're like, we go way back. Marquita and I, we're about 6 years back, you know, at best. But you know, this guy, let's say we grew up together, and I feel to him like David did to Jonathan. That is a very sacred relationship, and it could bring a very negative effect. It could really hurt my wife if I refuse to deal with the competition that relationship is bringing to bear in her. And so for me, my advice, and I'm not speaking this as an expert, you know, but my advice is on two folds. To the husband first. You should communicate to your wife that she's number one, period. Okay. Yeah, me and Joey go way back. You know, we're thicker than thieves. He's on the road to hell. As a result of listening to this past Sunday's message, my desire is for him to someday to be saved. I don't need to be running with him. I don't need to be, you know, hanging with him on the same level as I used to because I'm light and he's darkness, but I love him as a forever friend. So I'm not just going to flush him out of my life, but I'm going to be separate from him, but close enough that when he's ready to make that decision for Christ, that I could be there. I'm believing for him to get saved. But I, you know, as that husband, I would want to assure my wife that we're number one. And even though I do almost anything for Joey, I do everything for you. Okay. And there's no question about that. The second point of advice, in my opinion, that I would give would be to the wife. It's like just only to as you're communicating your concern and what's going on in that friendship, respect the fact that this is a covenant. This is like David and Jonathan. They would die for each other. And so when you're called into question, you know, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever heard this, if your mama was on the train, and my mama might be watching this, so I don't know if I'm going to get a text after this. If your mama was on the train and your wife was on the train and it was going to crash, and you could save only one person, who would you say? Well, man, when you first started answering that question, it was already, you know, the answer is you say you believe for a miracle. Okay, Mom, right? But you save your wife first, bottom line, and obviously my mother would agree. You're, you know, and there's a divine order. There's a divine order in relationships. So I don't know if I did a good job answering that question.
I think you did fairly well, pretty good. If I was to, you know, ask myself that question, I believe my first step would be to pray, really to ask God for guidance as to how to have that conversation with a friend that I've had for years. Because as you say, we're thicker than thieves. There's a covenant bond that we've created with each other. And then I would proceed forward with having the conversation with my friend that this is my husband. We've created essentially a new covenant relationship with each other, and the state of our friendship, the level of our friendship is going to change slightly. That does not mean I love you any less, and that this covenant that we've made with each other is different. That just simply means that my husband comes first now, and then we can take care of business together. But we are still very much so friends. And so I think that wisdom that God can provide will just open a door, open a window, so that both parties will be, I don't know if the word satisfied or comforted by the decision that has to be made.
Yeah, man, that's good. So, I think I think you get a rounded picture from that.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to respect your covenant relationship with your spouse above all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to respect the fact that that other relationship is a very serious relationship. What you don't want to do is put an ultimatum on them.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it came down to an ultimatum, I mean, that person should choose that spouse. But just be sensitive that, man, we're dealing with something that's really, this is like to death do them part. And so approach it. The big concern is because, again, evil companions affect good morals. And so if your spouse is hanging out with somebody that's not saved and they're forever friends, the last thing you want is your spouse forever in hell with his friend.
You don't want that.
So, like she said, pray, get the wisdom of God, because not only do you want to save your husband, you want to see, or your wife, you want to see your husband or your wife's, your spouse's friends saved as well, and God could use someone very close to them in a real way like that. So I got a question.
Okay.
You had a question for me. I have a question for you.
All right.
And then after this, we'll wrap it up. But what about that husband? Like when a spouse gets married, and let's say a husband has a wife, and she's got forever friends that have been in her life through thick and thin, good times and bad times. Is it necessary or automatic that that husband become covenant friends or even be friends with her friends?
I'm going to answer that with saying no. Absolutely not. And I say that simply because um, one person or one part of the party is going to feel as if the relationship was forced.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only doing this because I was asked to do, or I'm doing this for fear that if I don't, my relationship with this person is in jeopardy. However, I do feel that when we take the approach that your friends are your friends, and then over time, the more we get together, the more we gather together, the more we fellowship, we become friends, that it's a natural thing that takes place that makes a world of difference. Simply because your friends have taken time to get to know me,
Mm-hmm.
and I've taken time to get to know them. And then from there, we create our own covenant relationship with one another. And in doing so, we operate, I believe, with the wisdom of God, because it says, he who wants friends must show himself friendly. And you
Yeah.
have to start at that angle.
Man, that's good. For me, and as a real life experience, growing up in church, I've been in church all my life. I feel like I was born in church. My dad graduated seminary the year that I was born, but had been in ministry obviously before that. And so I've been exposed in around singles ministries, married ministries. I've done all of that. And I've heard at times that, well, your spouse's friends have to be your friends. And if they're not, then you need to cut them out. Or if a wife is married and has single best friends, then, she need to cut off those kind of relationships because she's married, they're single. Now, I'm not saying you have to cut them off. I'm not saying you have to keep them. But what I am saying is, yes, a single life of a single woman can have a negative impact, but also a married woman can have a positive impact. So, what are we sacrificing here? But what I would say is this. So in that, I would hear that, well, your spouse's friends need to be, and that's great when it can happen. But all I'm asking you to do, one, go back and listen to covenant relationships, because if your spouse has a forever friend, one, I'm just asking you to consider, especially if they're unsaved, consider it though, respect it.
Mm-hmm.
Consider it for what it is. You know that light doesn't fellowship with darkness, and one can pull the other down. But also in the same way, the other can pull the one up. So just there's a degree of respect to that. And then secondly, I don't think you have to. Now, it's fun when you do.
Yes.
We have friends who actually, they were her friends. Now I consider them my friends. When we got married, Chris Bibzak and his wife Ace, they live up in Iowa. They're probably watching now or later. And, I sat down with them a month or two ago, and I'm thinking, wow, these are great. I've known them for the entire time. They were at our wedding, of course. And but they have really become forever friends to me. That I love them and want to see them succeed and do well in life. And it's a blessing when that happens, but it doesn't have to be an automatic.
Correct. That is correct.
Awesome. Well, we've run through our time for today. I'm going to be back on tomorrow. I always would love for you to be with me, whether we're talking about marriage stuff or not. I love having you near me, man.
Love you too.
And you smell good too. Anyway, we'll see y'all next time. If you get a chance, please, before this week is out, check out Covenant Keeper number 5. Friends Don't Let Friends
Go to Hell.
Go to Hell.
Yes.
God bless you. We love you. We'll see you next time.